The Socialist Novel. In the 16th century and the first half of the 17th century, we encounter several works of socialist thought separated by lengthy intervals of several decades or even longer. Toward the end of the 17th century and in the 18th, the situation changes, a steady stream of socialist literature comes into being. Socialist ideology comes into fashion and acquires an influence, in one form or another. A majority of the thinkers of the time are affected by it. We can distinguish two trends in the general course of things: entertaining socialist novels intended for a broad audience and the drier socialist literature of a philosophical and sociological character. The sources of both types of writing are in More and Campanella, but by the late 17th century the differences become substantial and the two currents each attain a distinct character. History of the Severites, El Histoire des Severambe, by Denis Verus may be considered the first of the typical socialist novels. Volume I, particularly interesting as a specimen of this new literature, was published in 1675. Adventures at sea are recounted, a shipwreck, landing on all unknown continent and the story of the traveler's life on shore. Finally, the travelers meet the inhabitants of the continent and become acquainted with their strange life. Instead of the dry descriptions of More and Campanella we are given vivid travel impressions rendered by the narrator, Captain Sidon. Almost the entire book is devoted to the account of his travels across the land of the Severites and what he saw there. Only the last 10 pages contain a description of the state and economic structure of the place. The state was founded by a Persian named Severius, who discovered the continent and encountered the savage tribes living there in conditions of primitive communism, with communality of property and wives. By a series of ruses, he convinces them that he has arrived from the sun to tell them the laws and the will of the god of the Sunday. These laws were accepted by the people and have shaped the structure of their state. The religion of the sun is accepted and the sun itself is proclaimed king of the land. The sun appoints a viceroy from among the inhabitants. In practice, the post of viceroy is filled by lot from among 4 candidates proposed by the Council of High Officials. The viceroy has absolute power, limited only by the right of the council to declare him mentally incapacitated. Beneath the viceroy there is a complex hierarchy of officials, partly elected by the people and partly appointed from above. These officials enjoy numerous privileges. They have more wives than other citizens, personal slaves, better houses, food, and clothing. The great mass of the population, all handsome and well-built people, live a carefree and happy life in well-organized cities and magnificent communal abodes. A third part of the day they work under the supervision of officials and spend the rest of the time sleeping or enjoying themselves. Beneath them on the social ladder are the state and private slaves, who are obtained as tribute from conquered nations. They do the heavy work and their women serve as concubines to citizens and foreign guests. The economy is based on complete state ownership. Severius, quote, abolished the right of property, deprived private persons of it and willed it so that all land and wealth should belong exclusively to the state to dispose of it in such a way that subjects could receive only what was granted them by officials. End quote. The entire population lives and works in communes of 1,000 persons. These are located in large square houses. The communes turn in the products of their work to the state warehouses, where they also receive all their necessities. In particular, they are all issued standard clothing. It varies only in color, depending on the age group of the owner. Quote, the state takes care of all this, demanding neither taxes nor tolls, and the whole people under the government of the monarch lives in happy affluence and with well-secured rest. End quote. All citizens are obliged to work to maintain the state warehouses and, quote, for fear lest they grow restive in plenty and entertainment or be softened by idleness. End quote. All the citizens of the land are beautiful and of fine bearing. Cripples are exiled to remote towns, as are sterile women. The government painstakingly sees to the complete isolation of the country from the external world, but the Severites are aware of the latest developments in engineering and the sciences in Europe and Asia. This is possible because people are sent regularly to foreign lands in order to learn languages and all other useful knowledge. When abroad, citizens are forbidden to tell anything at all about their country. To guarantee that they return home, they are not permitted to leave their native land until they are able to put up at least 3 children as a pledge. History of the Severites gives us a notion of the socialist novels that followed it. We shall therefore only briefly note a few other examples that illustrate various aspects of this genre. The Southern Land, La Terre Australe Connue, ascribed by Bell to Gabriel de Foigny, a monk from Lorraine, appeared in 1676. It is the story of a voyage to the still unknown fifth part of the globe, in the southern hemisphere. The land discovered by the travelers is inhabited by an androgynous people, the Australians. Their life is founded on complete freedom. Everyone acts as his reason dictates. There is only a single law according to which all must give birth to at least one child. The inhabitants exist in complete innocence, knowing neither clothing nor government nor the words thine and mine. Everyone receives an identical upbringing, which from early infancy instills in the inhabitant the idea that all are equal. The Adventures of Telemachus, Les Aventures de Telemaque, by Fenelon appeared in 1699. The interest of this book lies in the fact that it surveys not only the ideal socialist society but intermediate forms as well. The first and second phases of socialism are discussed. In Quest of Odysseus, Telemachus visits 2 different communities, Boetica and Salentum. Land tenure in Boetica is communal. All property and fruit of the earth and trees, cows, and goats' milk is held in common. Most of the inhabitants are tillers or herdsmen. The arts are considered harmful and there are almost no craftsmen. The citizens see their happiness in simplicity, thanks to which no one feels any deprivation. They live in families in conditions of perfect equality. Salentum had been brought to economic ruin by the extravagant and proud king Idomeneus. Mentor, the wise old man who accompanies Telemachus, and who is in reality the goddess Minerva in disguise, establishes a new regime which is an intermediate stage on the path to complete communality. The population is divided into 7 classes, each with its own prescribed type of dwelling, clothing, food, furniture, and parcel of land. Private ownership is preserved, but in a limited form. No one possesses more land than is necessary for his subsistence. Trade is also permitted. The Republic of Philosophers or the History of the SJWs, attributed to Fontenelle, appeared in 1768. A storm tosses some travelers onto an unknown shore, the island of Ajao. The island had many years before been conquered by the SJWs, who annihilated a large part of the indigenous population and made slaves of the rest. Production is based on slave labor. The slaves live in barracks, where they are locked in at night. The number of slaves is strictly controlled. Excess children were once killed, but at present they are taken to the shore of China and abandoned there. The free population of the island, the SJWs, live in complete communality. The words mine and thine are unknown to them. The entire land belongs to the state, which regulates its cultivation and distributes its products. Everyone is obliged to work in agriculture for a certain length of time. Crafts are organized in the same way. It is the duty of all citizens to enter into marriage. Moreover, every man has 2 wives. Children are brought up not by their parents but in state schools. The SJWs have no cults, no priests, or sacred books. They worship nature as their good mother. They recognize no supreme being but believe that everything living has intelligence. They believe that the soul is material and mortal. The Southern Discovery by a Flying Man or the French Daedalus, very philosophical novel by Restif de la Bretonne, appeared in 1781. The complicated plot, a love story, the invention of a means of flying with artificial wings, the founding of a new state in the southern hemisphere, leads to the discovery of Megapatagonia, the antipode of France. The basic law of this country is communality, quote, without perfect equality there is neither virtue nor happiness. Let everything be held in common among equals. Let everyone work for the common good. End quote. 12 hours daily are given over to work in common and the other 12 to relaxation and sleep. Meals are taken in common. All social distinctions are determined solely by age. Power is in the hands of the old men. Marriage is temporary, contracted for 1 year. Emotions are not much taken into account. only services to the state entitles one to beautiful girls. The right of first choice therefore belongs to old men of 150 years or more. When the wife becomes pregnant, the marriage is dissolved. The woman nurses her child at first, then hands it over to official tutors. The relations between fathers and children are, quote, essentially the same as between persons who hardly know one another. All children are children of the people. End quote. Dramatic works and painting are forbidden. The Mega-Patagonians assert that they wish only real things and only have time to enjoy the genuine pleasures, never thinking of imaginary ones. However, there is music among them, and they sing songs glorifying great men, pleasure, and love. All other subjects are banned from poetic expression. The ethics of this society is based on obtaining the greatest possible pleasure, quote, get rid of all unpleasant sensations, use everything that legitimately supplies pleasure, but without weakening or overstraining the organs. End quote. Quote, what especially strengthens sound morals among us is the fact that moral questions are not left to the whim of private persons. Thanks to our equality and our communality, the accepted morality is uniform and public. End quote. Mega-Patagonians describe the content of their religious doctrine thus, quote, to use one's organs in accordance with the intention of nature, abusing nothing and neglecting nothing. End quote. In answer to the question of temples, they point to the sky and to the earth. They esteem the sun as the universal father and the earth as the universal mother.